and see how that feels. So a couple of little bridge poses, keeping it easy, just noticing really what movement is available to you right now. Good. That's very nice. And when you've done a couple of little bridge poses, maybe then just fold your knees into your chest for a moment so that I can see that you've done that and we can move on to the next thing we're going to do. So you can fold your knees into your chest, you can hold around your knees, you can do a little bit of rocking from side to side. Good. Okay, lovely. And then bring your feet back to stand on the floor. So keep your knees bent, bring your feet to stand on the floor. And then you're going to bring your hands around the back of your head and interlink your fingers around the base of your skull. And we're going to do this little mini sit-up. So what I'd like you to do is let a breath come in. And then as you exhale, you're lifting your head a little. You're gathering your elbows in. You're looking between your legs. And then you come back down as you breathe in. Next time you come up, what I'd like you to do is then try to add in your tilting of your pelvis. So you're tipping your tailbone off the floor. So you're thinking about as you lift up on your out breath into this little mini sit-up, you're tipping your pelvis so the middle of your back is pressing down on the ground. And we'll just repeat this a few times, keeping it easy. So we're not trying to do a massive abdominal workout at this point, keeping it easy, looking between your legs, moving into the little mini sit-up as you exhale. And trying to feel that we're pressing the middle of our back down onto the floor. So maybe just do one more and then rest for a couple of breaths. So you could bring your arms down from behind your head. We're going to do a little bit more of this in a moment. So if you're feeling enthusiastic about your mini sit-ups, we haven't quite finished with them. What you're going to do now is you're going to alternate between doing, we'll start with a bridge pose. So have your arms by your sides. So come into a bridge pose and see how it feels after all those mini sit-ups. And you might find that there's a bit more movement in bridge. And then 3 times we're going to alternate between doing bridge pose and then coming into one of those little mini sit-ups. So little mini sit-up, hands behind your head, and then coming into your bridge pose. And repeat that 3 times. And just see how, particularly how when you come, that's very nice. How when you come into bridge pose, whether moving into, that's, yeah, lovely. Moving into your little mini sit-ups in between bridge helps you develop the movement. And it's not that you're pushing yourself in bridge to go anywhere particularly, but just, yeah. I often find that I naturally find a bit more movement in bridge when I'm doing my little mini sit-ups in between. Good. And remember to use your exhalation to take you into the mini sit-ups. Good, beautiful bridge poses, lovely. And when you've done this 3 times, you can fold your knees into your chest and hold around your knees. There's no rush. So that I know you've finished. You're ready to move on. Very nice. Good. Yeah. So you can hug your knees into your chest. You can rock a little bit from side to side. Lovely. And you can also take your legs up towards the ceiling and give your legs a little bit of a shake out. That's nice, good. Good. Wonderful. And then you can bring your feet back down onto the ground. Cross your arms over your chest. So you're giving yourself a hug, that's it. And then start to let your knees and your elbows and your head all tilt to the right and all tilt to the left. So we quite often do this movement, and I suppose it's one of my favourites, this feeling where we're rocking side to side across the back of our body. That's, yeah, lovely. We're doing, yeah, feeling the weight rock towards the right side of our back, the left side of our back. It's a chance to give ourselves a bit of a massage. So just have the bin lorry passing by now. It's all happening here on a Monday morning. What you're going to do in your own time is rock all the way onto one side and have a few breaths on your side, and then we're going to come onto hands and knees. So have a few breaths on your side. This would be possibly a good time as you make your way onto hands and knees to remove your socks if you're still wearing socks. It's a little bit fresh this morning, coming onto hands and knees. So some of you may know, I said earlier in the class, we're not doing any standing today, which doesn't mean we're not going to be doing lots of things, but I thought we would have a different sort of focus today. We've been focusing a lot on the feet. So I suppose our focus today is particularly on the spine and the middle of ourselves. So come on to cat pose, set hands and knees, sorry, I've given it away. We're going to come and do a bit of cat, and then we're going to try a few different things in cat. So first of all, coming onto hands and knees and just seeing how your cat pose feels today. So how does it feel to round your back to the ceiling? How does it feel to dip your spine down to the floor? And cat is always just a really good place to start to get a sense of how our spine is feeling, how our lower back is feeling, how we feel between the shoulder blades and the upper back, how our neck is feeling. So yeah, when you let your head hang when your back is rounding, what does that feel like in your neck? Just a couple more times, rounding and dipping, and letting your breath flow through you. And then in a moment, from a rounded up cat, you're going to rock back into child pose for a couple of breaths. So then we're going to do a little bit more cat. So round your back to the ceiling, rock your hips back over your heels, settle down in child pose for a couple of breaths. And so in child pose, we just really want that sense of settling, of letting our elbows rest, letting our forehead rest, feeling the movement of our breath through our body. So we're going to come back onto hands and knees, and we're going to think about cat in a couple of different ways. We're going to try and imagine that we're starting the movement from one end of our spine. So I'd like you to start by taking your awareness to your tailbone, so the very end of your spine, the bottom of your spine. And you're going to think about your tailbone tipping down and between your legs, so like a dog when they're unhappy and they tuck their tail between their legs. And then you're going to think about your tailbone tipping up towards the ceiling, and you're trying to let the rest of your spine follow. But just imagine the movement starts with your tailbone tipping down and tucking under, and then your tailbone tipping all the way up towards the ceiling. And you're letting the rest of your body follow in cat. But imagine that the movement is starting with the movement of the tailbone at the very end of the spine. And you're sort of almost drawing a bit of an arc all the way from that sort of tucked between your legs tailbone, sort of unhappy dog, to tipping the tailbone up towards the ceiling. And try that a couple more times. And just noticing how your cat feels. And then we're going to take our focus to the other end of our spine, and your focus is actually going to be on your eyes. So you're going to look back between your legs towards your feet and let the rest of your spine help with that movement by rounding to the ceiling. And then you're going to let your gaze travel forwards on the floor and even sort of a little bit off the floor to the wall in front of you. And again, just carry on with letting your gaze travel back behind you, looking between your legs towards your feet. Let your gaze travel forwards on the floor, and maybe possibly without pushing it up the wall in front of you. And a few more times, moving in and out of cat with this focus on the gaze. And if we think about the very top of our spine being right up in our skull, then our eyes, I suppose, are almost like that top part of the spine. Maybe one more time, letting your gaze look back behind you towards your feet, letting your back round, and then letting your eyes travel forwards along the floor. And then for a moment, just sit back over your heels or sit up and give your hands a shake out, because we're going to come into a couple of dog poses now. So we just need to make, yeah, exactly, Aditi, you can do that one as well. Bring the backs of your hands to touch. So when you've given your hands a bit of an ease out, come back onto hands and knees, tuck your toes under, and exhale, rock your hips back over your heels. Come up into dog pose, and just a bit of, yeah, how does dog pose feel today? So the first dog pose, as we know, is just very much, very much getting a sense of how is our body. We might feel quite tight. We might feel we want to bend both knees. We want to walk on the spot. Yes, that was a good move, Sheila. I think taking your feet back further. That looks like, yeah, well done. Yeah, so sometimes we come into dog and there might be quite big adjustments that we feel that we need. Maybe a bit more, yeah, space between hands and feet. If the shoulders are feeling stiff, then taking the hands wider apart on the floor is another adjustment. So remember, I said we're going to do 2 dog poses. So whenever you feel that you want to come out of this first dog, you can. And sometimes it might be you immediately want to go back into another dog. You might want to go into child for a moment. You might want to shake your hands out again, being in kneeling. And then often when we come into our second dog, it can feel, we just start to feel that we're settling into things a little bit more. So again, if your shoulders felt stiff, it might be that you take your hands wider apart this time. Might be that you have a bit more distance between your hands and your knees if your dog felt a bit short. Bring into your second dog, and again, just thinking about adjustments you could make. So when I came into that second dog pose then, what I felt I wanted to do was bend my both knees a lot, come right up onto the balls of my feet. So my sort of chest comes close to my thighs. That's nice, yeah. So these are just possibilities. The most important thing is just to feel how your body is in this dog, and what can you do to help things undo and ease. So you can stay for a few more breaths in this dog if it feels helpful to be there. But from this dog, you're going to come down and have a couple of breaths in child pose before we move on. So whenever it feels right for you to settle in child. Lovely, lovely dogs. So when you're settling in child pose, just making the most of that opportunity to rest and be quiet. So the elbows resting, feeling wide across the back of the shoulders. So we can have this focus in child pose where when we exhale, we imagine the out breath sort of traveling from the base of the neck, through the shoulders, down the length of the arms and out through the palms and the fingertips. And of course, this doesn't really happen with the breath, but we can imagine that this is the sort of journey of the out breath. Through the base of the neck, through the shoulders, down through the arms, out through the palms and the fingertips. And as the breath leaves us in that imaginary way, it can maybe just take away some of those tightnesses and tensions that easily build up in the shoulders and the arms. And then we're going to be coming back onto hands and knees. And I was just thinking, from having our sort of miserable dog with the tail tucked between the legs, we're going to come and do a bit of our tail wagging movements now, which is much, much happier. So you could start by a little bit of imagining you have a tail and wagging your tail from side to side. And then we'll do the similar movement, but by using our legs. So what I'd like you to do with one leg, and repeat the same side a few times, is take your lower leg out to the side and then look along the floor towards your foot. And repeat that a few times on the same side. So your knee stays where it is, you let your foot and lower leg come out on the floor and you look along. And you can feel how that side of your body is shortening, that side of your ribs. And then repeat the same movement on the other side. So letting the other lower leg and foot come out to the side, we're looking along the floor. And then you can take that on into little fishes. So where you're swinging both lower legs from side to side. And depending, if you're going slowly with this, you could also look towards your feet. If you're going, you could also go quickly and not look towards your feet. So it might make you a bit dizzy. So those are the options there. And very nice tail. And then finally, come back to the first tail wagging we did, where you're leaving your legs, your feet quiet on the floor. And it's just that feeling of the pelvis moving. And as your pelvis moves, it's not just side to side, it's that feeling that the pelvis is moving up towards the shoulder a little bit. So one side of your body is shortening and the other is lengthening out. Okay. Good. And then we're going to come into dog pose again. So sit back over your heels for a moment or come into up kneeling, give your hands a little bit of a shake out. And we're going to come and do another couple of dog poses. I mean, again, it's up to you. If you prefer to do one long dog pose, depends really how your dog pose feels. Or, you know, in your own time, a couple of dog poses. So when you're ready, settling your hands back onto the floor. Tucking your toes under, exhaling, rocking your hips back over your heels, and just, how does it feel to come into your dog pose now? That's nice. Yes. So the dog poses are all looking like they're starting to release and soften a bit more. Good. But again, we might want to carry on with bending one knee at a time, that walking on the spot. That sort of bending both knees, coming right up onto the balls of the feet and bringing your chest close to your thighs. Really letting the head go. So if we let the head release in dog pose, this gives an opportunity for the spine to lengthen out, particularly the back of the neck. Good, looking very nice. So yes, if you feel that you want to come down for a moment, either shake your hands out or have a breath or two in child pose, you can do. And then it might be you want to do another dog pose. So in this next dog pose, if you liked, we could, because we've had this focus on the last few weeks on working on our feet, you could in your next dog pose, so we don't miss out working on our feet, do this one where you're rolling one foot at a time onto the ball of your foot, then through the tips of your toes and onto the top of your toes. So if you want, you don't have to do that, but I'm just thinking if you want a slightly different focus for your dog pose. And sometimes in dog pose, I find it helpful to not be focusing, to be doing something like this, working on my feet, because I'm not focusing on my shoulders and my upper back where I generally feel stiff. And then when you've rolled through each foot a couple of times, you can settle in your dog. And just, yes, very nice. Good. And then just perhaps bring your attention a little bit more towards the shoulders. Can you rest down through your arms and your hands and let the shoulders soften and undo? Good. And from this dog pose, you can stay there a bit longer if you like. From this dog pose, again, come down and just have a couple of quiet breaths in child pose. So come back to that chance of resting in child. Resting, settling. Come back to that focus of exhaling, that sort of focus of the exhalation leaving through the shoulders, the length of the arms, out through the palms and the fingertips. So the sense of releasing tension, holding from the shoulders and arms and palms as we breathe out. So we're working today, I suppose, with some of these movements of the spine. So we've been doing our cat movements, which is our flexing and extending. We've been doing our side bending with our tail wagging. We're going to move on now to a little bit of twisting, but on hands and knees. So there's two stages. You all know this one. I think because we've done our kneeling twist quite a lot. So I'd like us to do this twist today, where we're sliding one arm underneath. And we're seeing how that feels. And then we can also let the top arm come up and onto the back of our pelvis. So I think you all know this one, but we haven't done it for a few weeks. So one arm slides underneath. And I tend to then have a couple of breaths there, just settling myself. And you're resting on the side of your head. So you need to make sure that your neck is happy with this. So interestingly, the neck is in a side bend. And then if your neck is okay with that, you can see how it feels to take your top arm up towards the ceiling. So I always like to take my arm up, have a breath or two there, and then you can also bring the hand to rest on the back of your pelvis, or you might find it's more helpful to have your arm up. Just a couple of breaths here. And this twist really, I find, starts to release tightness in my upper back between my shoulder blades. And we can then come back down and we can swap onto the other side. So doing the same thing on the other side. So we're first of all sliding the one arm underneath. So the side of your head comes down to the floor and you're checking how your neck feels with that. You're resting on that bottom shoulder. And then it's how does it feel to take your arm up towards the ceiling? And from there, you've got these options of taking your hand onto the back of your pelvis. So I probably would play around with a bit of taking my arm down to the back of my pelvis, a bit of taking my arm up towards the ceiling. And just, yeah, how does that feel? How does that feel in the upper back? And moving into some of that tightness, perhaps between the shoulder blades. Lovely. Good. And yes, do come out of that when you're ready. And then we're going to come into one more dog pose. And if you like in this dog pose, you can make it into one of your one-leg dogs. You might, first of all, just after that twist, I always feel a bit perplexed about where my body is in space. So you might just want to come into a normal dog for a couple of breaths. And once you've settled in dog, you could then see, if you like, what's it like to take one foot off the floor and start that sort of exploration of reaching a leg back behind you, letting your pelvis roll. If that feels something, yeah, that would be nice to explore now. Yeah, and it's with these ones, it's always good to have a little go. And if it doesn't feel so good today, and you can always, yes, that you can be bending that raised leg, you can have the raised leg long. And again, if it doesn't feel so great on one side, you don't need to stay there. Lovely. Very nice. Good. And also when you've done that one-leg dog on each side, then when you come back to a normal dog, you sort of think, oh, that feels quite nice and easy. Can the shoulders really quieten and soften? Lovely. Very nice. So yes, that's it. Good. Just a sort of couple of quiet breaths in dog pose after your one-leg dogs before you come back down. And we're going to come into another, yes, good sort of shaking hands out, Sheila, is a good idea. We're going to come into, we've done this one for a little while. This is this pigeon variation where it takes us into another side bending movement. So from hands and knees, you're going to be taking your knee forwards, but keeping your heel under its buttock. So if you were to look at me from behind, I'm not taking my knee out to the side in pigeon. I'm just taking one knee forwards and the heel is staying under the buttock of the same leg. And you're coming down onto your elbows. And I think we have done this one before, but not for a while. It's the one where we then let our pelvis rock to the outside of the heel and to the inside of the heel. So we're doing this sort of side to side movement. So the pelvis is, if we're on our elbows, and our pelvis is rocking to the outside of our heel, to the inside of the heel. Of course, if this doesn't feel right in the knee or somewhere else, then come out. That's nice. Good, good. That's it, yeah. But this actually can be a really helpful movement because we will be, Sharon, you'll be thrilled to hear going on and doing a bit more normal pigeon in a while. But this is really good preparation for pigeon. I think it's also really helpful for knee things. That's it. So a few more times, letting the pelvis rock. And you can just see, what would it be like to look down the sides of your body? So if you were thinking about this as being a side bending movement, a bit like our tail wagging, which side of your body would you look down when? So see if you can, coordinate tilting your pelvis with looking down one side of your body towards your back foot and then the other. And we can swap sides. You might be ready. You might have been ready a while ago to swap sides. So you can, of course, take that sort of looking down the sides of your body focus onto side two. So onto side two, again, you've got your heel under the buttock of its leg, and then we're rocking our pelvis towards the inside and the outside. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge movement, but some of you might find, if this is easy, that your pelvis rocks all the way down towards the ground on either side. And also just that experimenting with what is it like if you look down along the length of your body towards your back foot. Obviously making sure your neck stays comfortable, not craning your neck. There's no benefit of doing that. Okay, just a couple more times. And then it might feel quite nice when you've had enough on this side to do one last dog pose. So you can come back onto hands and knees. And just perhaps, sort of just a quiet dog pose where your focus is on your breathing. So it might be you arrive in dog and you have a couple of big sighing breaths. And then from a couple of big sighing breaths, you just see how is it to focus in on feeling the in and the out breath moving through you. And sometimes when we go upside down, it might not be so easy to focus on our breathing. It might be that you feel you need to breathe through your mouth more or exaggerate your breath, and that's absolutely fine. But also sometimes it can be possible to sort of feel quiet with our breathing in dog pose. Very nice. Wonderful. So yes, when you come down from dog, we're going to sit with our legs long and wide and lean back onto our hands. Good. And we won't stay here too long. We'll stay here a little bit longer next time we come here. But just maybe to start with, how does it feel today? You don't have to take your legs massively wide. So it might be that you have a little play around with where is a good width to have your legs today, and really leaning back onto your hands. So there's no, you're minimizing the pressure. But if it feels, wherever it feels good, you can give your legs a little bit of a roll in and out. And you could also a couple of times stretch into your heels and try and spread your toes. And sometimes when you do that, that actually helps you feel that you can sit a little bit more upright. And then relax your legs. So again, do that. Stretch into your heels, spread your toes, and then relax your legs. Good. Then lean back on your hands a bit more, because you're going to come to cobbler pose without using. See if you can slide your feet into cobbler pose. And I know this does depend a bit on what sort of surface you've got beneath you, how sticky it is. So come into cobbler pose, and just a few movements we could do here. So maybe a little bit of circling. Yeah, the circling and rocking is the various things. A bit of, can you circle around a little bit? You could also, I'll just give you us these possibilities and we can try them. A bit of rocking. So rocking from one sit bone to the other. And you could have your hands on the floor beside you. So if it's better to, have some support through your arms, you can do that. So a bit of rocking. Good. And then also coming again to our side bending movement. So a bit of lengthening through one side and then the other. So in this one, we're trying to leave our legs and pelvis heavy and then lean from side to side and feel that we're widening through our ribs. One side and then the other. Okay. And then the final one we could do here is just a little twist in cobbler pose. And so sometimes in this, maybe just take your weight back onto your hands for a moment. And I often take my feet slightly further forwards than I would do if I'm doing a twist. So in your cobbler pose twist, I would hold on to, so one hand holds onto your feet or your ankle, and the other fingertips are on the floor behind you. So try as a bit like a guy rope, just trying to keep your spine upright and long. So we're turning in one direction, seeing how it feels to feel wide across the front of your chest. And we'll only have a couple of breaths here, and we'll go the other way and have a couple of breaths as well. So when you've turned one way, come back to the center, swap your hands over. So one hand is supporting you by holding onto your feet or your ankles, and your other fingertips are sort of back on the floor, again, trying to help support your spine. And then, yes, you can untwist, come back to the center. Let's take cobbler pose on into pinwheel. So let one knee come on top of the other and slide your top leg back. We'll do a little bit of circling here. So we're going to use pinwheel in a moment to come on into pigeon pose. So you can do a little bit of circling here. If you feel that you'd like to do your pinwheel forward bend before you come on into pigeon pose, you could do. So turning towards this knee that's going out to the side. So it maybe depends how long you want to stay in pigeon pose. So if you're trying to put off going into pigeon pose, you could come into your pinwheel forward bend. If you're raring to get into pigeon pose, from pinwheel, you can be sliding this knee back a little bit. So really, yes, so sliding this knee back in pinwheel and then leaning our weight through this bent leg so that we can lengthen out the back leg, maybe tucking the toes under, walking it back. And again, in pigeon, it's up to you how much you want to try and bring your pelvis level, how much you want to roll your pelvis over, or how much you want to stay sort of with your weight through that bent front leg. It's fine. And have a few breaths in your pigeon pose if that is tolerable. And remember, in pigeon, you can always do a bit of rocking. So one thing you can do is tuck your back toes under and sort of rock yourself a little bit forwards and back on your mat. Or you can also rock a little bit from side to side in pigeon. Probably, maybe not with your back toes tucked under. And if you can bear to stay where you are, I just want to come and have a little look and see if I can make any suggestions. Okay. Enough. Yes. Good. Very nice. Now, when you're coming out, you're going to roll onto this front leg. And then what I would like you to do is bring your back leg and swing your back leg around so it comes forwards. So now you've got, so what, your bent leg, your front leg, you're going to have that foot standing on the floor and the other leg is long. Yeah, so this was, my long leg is what was my back leg. And my bent leg is what was my front leg. And just here, from here, we're going to lie down in a moment. From here, I'd just like you to do a little twist where you're turning away from that bent front leg for a couple of breaths, and you can hold around it. And again, use your fingertips on the floor for support. Good. And you can also turn towards that bent front leg. So you can turn towards your bent front leg and you can hold your front leg. Again, this bent front leg is giving you some support for your spine. And then come back to the center, keeping your legs as they are. You're going to lower yourself down onto the ground and just let yourself settle here. So you've still got the one leg bent and the other leg long. Because we're going to come into some of our foot pressing movements when we arrive on our back. So once you've arrived on your back, then come to those movements where as you exhale, you're pressing down into your bent knee foot and you're letting that side of the pelvis come away from the floor. So we all know this movement. So we're pressing down into the bent leg foot, we're letting that side of the pelvis come away from the floor, and the pelvis is tilting towards the long leg side. That's nice, good. And repeat this a few times. Keep your arms resting on the floor beside you for the moment. Lovely, that's it, yeah, it's really nice, soft shoulders, relaxed arms. You keep your legs as they are, but cross your arms over your chest, and whichever is bent, you want to have your arms over your chest. You've got the bent leg arm top. So now down into your foot. You can also roll across your upper back. So you're rolling towards the back of the long leg shoulder. And your head is rolling in that direction as well. That's nice. Good, and repeat that a few times. Very nice, yeah. So remember, the impulse for the movement comes from the pressing down into the bent leg, the bent knee foot. And then you start to roll across your upper back. Good, and some of you are doing that sort of, rather than rolling onto your fingertips, you can trail your fingertips out on the floor away from your body. Very nice. Could do that one more time. Yes, lovely. And then keep your arms crossed over your chest, but bend your other knee. That's it. And then come back to that movement we were doing towards the beginning of class, where you're letting your knees and your elbows and your head all rock to the right and to the left. That's it, lovely. Very nice, good. Yes, exactly, Sheila. And doing that same sort of trailing your fingers out along the floor on each side is helpful. Very nice. Lovely. And then from here, you're going to roll all the way onto one side and have a couple of breaths there. Because as you may have guessed, we have to come back into sitting and do our pigeon on the other side. But before we do that, we're actually going to do something. We're going to do a little bit of breathing. So what I'd like you to do is, if you lean back on your hands, just cross your ankles. And so this, yeah, just cross your ankles and a little bit of circling here. So, yeah, crossed ankles. So this doesn't necessarily feel the most natural position for me. So we're crossed ankles circling. And then what I want us to try in this position is 5 cycles of our Kapalabhati breathing. And if it's better for you to scoot your back towards the wall, you could do, but we're not going to be here very long. So it might be that you want to use one hand back to support you and one hand on your belly. So the Kapalabhati breathing, if you remember, it's the little out breath through our nose and we feel our belly move back. But we could maybe make the first 5, we'll do the little out breath through our mouth. So we're going to 5 times, short breath out through your mouth, feel your belly move back. Okay, lean back onto your hands, change the cross of your legs, so put the other leg in front and do a little bit of circling the other side. So if you're thinking about this, is almost like probably cross-legged, how they make children sit in assemblies at school, I think, which doesn't suit many of them, but it's quite good for our hips. So a little bit of circling, and we'll have another 5 Kapalabhati breaths. And this time you'll try and do those 5 little out breaths through your nose and feel your belly move back. So sort of settling down, letting a breath come in. And I will tend to make the 5th one a long one. Now lean back on your hands again, and this time lengthen your legs out. So we're going to take our legs, we're going to come back to this place where we had our legs long and wide. So again, they don't have to be really wide. See if you can find a place that's as comfortable for you. And we'll just do a little bit of, as we did before, a little bit, maybe letting the legs, we lean back, let the legs roll. Can we stretch into the heels, spread the toes? We're going to do our 5 Kapalabhati breaths in this position again. It's not always particularly easy. Again, you could be leaning back on one hand, have a hand on your belly. You could lean back on both hands. You don't have to have your hand on your belly. So let's see how it feels here to have those 5 little breaths. You can choose whether it's through your nose or your mouth. And make the 5th one a long one. So let a breath come in. Good. And then lean back on your hands again, give your legs a little wobble. And then from here, we'll bring our feet into Cobbler Pose again. And we'll do a final cycle. So this will be our last cycle of 5 Kapalabhati breaths sitting in Cobbler Pose. And again, you could be leaning back onto both hands, leaning back onto one hand and a hand on your belly, or you could be holding onto your feet or ankles to help you sit upright for your 5 little breaths. So either breathing through your nose or through your mouth, 5 Kapalabhati breaths. Let a breath come in. Good. Now we have the moment of truth. We need to remember which way we went for pinwheel and pigeon last time, so we can go the other way. So this is your little test to see who's awake on Monday morning. So we're back in pinwheel. We're doing a bit of circling here, and we'll be moving on into pigeon. So you've got a little choice here. Depends if you want more time in pigeon, you can go straight from this pinwheel circling into pigeon. If you'd like to come into your pinwheel forward bend before you come into pigeon, or miss pigeon out altogether, you can fold into your pinwheel forward bend. So I know pigeon's not everyone's favourite. So yes, a few breaths in your pinwheel forward bend, and then if you're wanting to see how pigeon feels on this side, from being in pinwheel, we let this knee that's turned out to the side that we folded over, we try and slide this knee back a little bit out to the side. Take our weight over that leg a bit more and see how it feels to try to lengthen the back leg out. Rolling over into our pigeon. And it's fine if we're staying offside in our pigeon, we can be leaning onto that front leg. We can stay in pinwheel if we prefer. Or we can be rolling the pelvis over, coming into pigeon, seeing how it feels. And again, I will come have a little look at you. So in pigeon, you could be on your elbows. You could fold down so your forehead comes nearer to the floor. Or you can come up onto your hands. But I tend to like to come up onto my hands when I've been a bit lower down to start with. That's nice, good. Yes, well done, lovely. Yes, and any little, very nice, any little rocking movements that you can do. That's a very nice little side bendy movement there, Sharon. That looks very nice. Okay, so if you're happy in pigeon and you would like to have a few more breaths here, particularly if you're doing any little rocking, easing movements, you can stay there. When you're ready to come out of pigeon, you're going to, again, rock your weight onto bent front leg. And remember what we did last time, so this back leg, we're leaning onto our hand, this back leg, we're swinging round. So that back leg lengthens out in front of us. We can lean back on our hands. Bent front leg, that knee still stays bent and the foot is standing on the floor. And then we can do these little twists, just briefly before we lie down. We can hold on to the bent front leg and turn towards the long leg. So remember, you're using this foot that's standing on the floor, that bent leg, as a support for your spine. And you can also use the fingertips on the floor as a support for your spine. Try and keep your shoulders soft and relaxed. So a couple of breaths turning away from your bent leg. And then a couple of breaths turning towards your bent leg. So holding that knee, swapping the arms so you've got the other fingertips on the floor behind you, trying to let the shoulders settle. Good, very nice. And then from here, just as we did on the other side, you're going to be lowering yourself down on the floor, keeping that one knee bent, keeping the other leg long, and letting yourself arrive on your back, settling your shoulders and your arms on the floor. Maybe feel the movement of a couple of cycles of breath through you. And then when you're ready, you start that movement pressing into the bent leg foot. As you exhale, perhaps pressing into the foot, letting that side of the pelvis come away from the floor, letting your pelvis tilt towards the long leg side. And repeating that a few times, and then we'll add in the variations. Good. So the next time your pelvis comes back to settle on the floor, you can cross your arms over your chest. So you've got your bent leg arm on top. That's it, good. So now as you press into your standing foot, you also roll towards the back of the long leg shoulder. That's nice. keep making sure that you're sending your knee over your standing foot rather than letting your knee wander out to the side. Aditi, I'm wondering whether you need your foot slightly nearer to your pelvis. I can't see your foot. Yeah, yes, but I'm just wondering whether yeah. So that's it, good. So repeat this a couple more times. And remember, you can trail your fingertips out away from your body rather than rolling onto them and being trapped under your shoulder. Good. Yes, and then that's it, Sharon. And then you can, next time your pelvis is on the floor, bend your long leg. Stand both feet on the floor. Keep your arms crossed over your chest so that you come to, yes, keep your arms crossed over your chest. So you come to that rocking from side to side. So the knees, the elbows, and the head. That's it. All rocking to the right and to the left. Very nice. Good. Good, good. Okay. And then from here, you're going to settle in the center, uncross your arms. And maybe just a couple of times, come back to, make sure your feet are really well planted on the floor. Come back to a couple of bridge poses. So rolling up and sinking into your feet. Rolling up and down through your spine. That's nice. Just seeing how bridge pose feels now. Good. So when you've done a couple of bridge poses, you can fold your knees into your chest. That's it. You can take, yeah, do a little bit of rocking with your knees folded into your chest. You can also take your legs up towards the ceiling and give them a shake out. And when you've done that, you can bring your feet back to stand on the floor. So we're just going to do a couple of little rocking things with the knees from side to side, taking this into a bit of a twist, and then we'll lie quietly. So that's it. You could just a couple of times, maybe with your feet as they are, let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And then pause in the center and take your feet wider. So your feet are as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And then start to tilt your knees with your feet in this position. And see how that feels. And then if you like from here, you can let your knees come all the way down on one side. Now, if they don't quite reach the floor, it doesn't matter if you're comfortable, but you can always slide a cushion under one knee if it feels that it's hovering. So you can let the knees come all the way down to the floor. And then you might roll your head towards the opposite shoulder, so in the opposite direction to your knees. So we feel that that shoulder is heavy, the knees are heavy. You can have 2 or 3 cycles of breath on this first side. So as you exhale, giving the weight of the legs down on one side of your body and feeling the opposite shoulder settling down onto the ground. Obviously, don't roll your head towards the shoulder if that doesn't feel comfortable for your neck. And then it's up to you. You can either come back to a little bit of letting your knees tilt from side to side, or you can go straight onto the second side. So just really whether if your body feels like it could do with a little bit of movement in between sides. Sheila, you might want to take your feet a bit wider again. That's it, they sort of crept in. So when you're ready, letting your knees come down onto side 2. And again, see how it feels. So sometimes one side is a bit tighter than the other, so you may need a cushion for support, or you may not. And then if it's comfortable, let your head roll in the opposite direction to your knees. And if not, just bringing your awareness into that shoulder. So we feel the knees are heavy on one side, the opposite shoulder is heavy. And each time the breath leaves you, you can imagine that sense of giving your weight to the floor, down through those 2 sides, down through the knees, down through the shoulder. Maybe just have another breath or 2 on that side. And then we'll come back and settle quietly in the center. Just says rest and breathe in my book. So good, yeah. So when you come back to the center, if there's any warm things you need to put on. The sun has come out now, which is rather lovely. I hope that's the same over in Worthing. Sharon, yes, I can see it coming through. I can see it coming through the window. Very nice. So settling down onto your backs. You can lie with your knees bent or your legs long. We're just going to have a couple of minutes of quiet lying down. So you can either have your arms resting on the floor beside you or your hands on your belly. And be aware of the flow of your breath through your body, but just keep your awareness soft and relaxed. So you're aware of the flow of your breath. You're aware of the ground beneath you, certain parts of your body in contact with the ground. You're aware of noises around you, the light, the feeling of the air on your skin. And just this sense of resting in the present moment, both within the sensations of your body and also within what's going on around you. There's other people present in the room, in the house, animals present. And all the time, somewhere, that flow of your breath felt somewhere in your body. The in-breath followed by the out-breath, over and over again.
So taking your time to come back round. Thank you very much, everyone.